Hello, everybody. Jerry Shockey here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm the Director of Youth and Education here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we're excited to continue just this almost this weekly series that we're doing amidst the pandemic, COVID-19, and everything else we have. We're just trying to push out as many resources as we can, not only for young people, but just for fans overall. And this week's a pretty exciting week for NFL fans because tomorrow starts the NFL draft, the first round. And so I'm joined by here, and we'll get to him in just a second. I'm joined by Jon Kendle, who's our archivist here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But before we do that, before we go into that, one of the things we always like to be clear, and I'm sure Jon will repeat the same thing as well as we do this, is that our mission here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is to honor the heroes of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence everywhere. And so as a youth education team, we get very excited about those last two components because we like to promote the values and to celebrate excellence everywhere. And so there's a lot of different ways we do that through video conferencing programs that we do, field trip programs that people come in. We connect with 40,000+ students a year all across the country and all over the globe. And so this is just another avenue for us to be able to reach out, not only to students and give interesting, insights into the game itself, but for our general fans as well. And so we are joined here by a good friend of mine too, because we've worked together for so long, our archivist here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Jon Kendle. And so Jon, you want to start off just telling them about a little bit about your background, your job title, all those kind of things.
Sure. I appreciate you having me on, Jerry. Like Jerry mentioned, I'm Jon Kendle, Director of Archives and Football Information here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So really what that entails is I oversee the organization, the digitization of our archive collection, which is over 40 million pages of documents, 6 million photographic images, nearly 40,000 artifacts related to not just the history of the game, but really every player, coach, and administrator who helped build the game to what it is today. So pretty blessed to be in the position that I'm in. I mean, when we talk about our mission, which Jerry mentioned, to honor the heroes of the game, preserve its history, promote its values, and celebrate excellence everywhere, I really feel like as an accredited museum, with our archive collection, we're really hitting on every one of those points with everything that we do. We're honoring the heroes of the game by preserving their legacies through their artifacts and documents and information. And then we're able to promote the positive values that the game teaches, the commitment, the integrity, the courage, the respect, the excellence through those artifacts and through their stories. As we write stories, as we disseminate that information out to our partners like the NFL or ESPN, national media outlets, et cetera. So through that, we're really celebrating their excellence, and we're showcasing that those same values that make you a great football player on the field, they transcend the football field. Those are the same things that make you a great leader, business leader, or musician, or whatever it is that you're in, the field that you're endeavoring in. Those same values can lead you to success.
And so Jon, I know we've worked together for years. I mean, you actually work in the youth education department, but this is where your heart and your passion is with the history of the game and the archive, and just so many exciting things that you're doing there with your position. So, what kind of fulfillment do you have with this job, with your passion, with history and everything else in sports?
Oh, it's great. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm blessed to be in the position that I am in, growing up in Canton, Ohio, thinking, man, who the heck ever gets a job at the Pro Football Hall of Fame? That would be pretty incredible to get paid to research and write about the history of football, something that, I would probably be doing in my spare time, even if I wasn't getting paid for it, because that's just something that I'm passionate about, something that I love to do. So to be in the position that I'm in, obviously I don't take it for granted. And for me, it goes back to that mission statement, and it's really about honoring not just the Pro Football Hall of Famers, and we do enshrine them, and we do make sure that we're highlighting them throughout the museum and throughout the different programs that we do. But when you talk about the Hall of Fame, we are the repository of information for the National Football League and all 32 club members, and so we have information related to all. I think it's nearly 27,000 individuals who played the game at the professional level. and then the countless men and women who have contributed to the game, whether it be coaching or at the executive level. So we're really, like I mentioned before, we're really preserving the history, not just of the game itself, but really of every player, coach, and administrator who built the game to what it is today. And that to me is something special. We're really just the guardians, because after I'm long gone and out of this position, somebody else will be in my same seat, and it'll be their turn to kind of take that flame and make sure that they're preserving the legacies of these individuals as well.
And it really is such a rich history. I mean, thinking about it, the hundreds of millions that have played at all levels, the millions that have played at the collegiate level, the, nearly, 30,000 that have been paid to play, coach, officiate, administrate the game. And there are now 346 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And your job is not just for the 346, but for the 30,000 that have been involved and to preserve their legacy, their history, and preserve that here. And so that's just an amazing responsibility that you have with the Hall of Fame. And let's just get a quick background on you. I mean, and I see the helmet in the background. Go ahead and tell the fans who's your favorite NFL team.
Well, being in Northeast Ohio, most people would probably associate me with the Cleveland Browns, but I'm actually a Cincinnati Bengals fan. I grew up a Cincinnati Bengals fan. I don't know. I think a lot of it had to do with Coach Paul Brown being from around this area, has a long history here in Northeast Ohio, coached at Massillon, which is about 10 miles west of Canton, but ultimately coached and was the general manager of the Cleveland Browns. After he was let go by Art Modell, ultimately formed the Cincinnati Bengals, and his family still runs the Cincinnati Bengals today. So, a little history there, but always been a Bengals fan, from the early 80s. So, that's my team, and I'm a pretty loyal person, maybe to a fault, but I still love it, and so excited for Thursday to see who the Cincinnati Bengals draft on with the first overall pick.
Well, let's talk about that then. We talk about the preserving the history and everything, and obviously with this week being the NFL draft, and let's talk about that. Let's go take it from a historical perspective. How did it all start? Who was the first draft? All those kind of things that maybe our fans want to hear.
Sure. Well, prior to the inaugural draft, the NFL draft in 1936, players were really free to sign with any club of their choosing. And what that happened, what happened with that was largely the strongest teams became even stronger because they had the leverage to sign some of the best college free agents coming out. So that created huge disparity amongst the league. And so on May 19th, 1935, the owners agreed or approved the plan devised by Bert Bell, who at the time was owner of the Philadelphia Eagles, later became the NFL commissioner, that they would hold an NFL draft every year, and the team with the worst record in the league the prior season would ultimately select first, and the team that won the NFL championship would select last in each round. And so what that did was it gave the worst team in the NFL the opportunity to select the top college prospects every year. With the first draft, it was an NFL owners meeting. It was kind of resembled probably a fantasy football draft in your living room today. But it was held at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, so maybe not as fancy or fancier than a living room, but in Philadelphia on February 8th, 1936. And, today teams employ year-round scouts to look into these prospects, and you have the scouting combine and all these different avenues to get to know these players. But back then, really, there wasn't that opportunity. I think that first draft, it was, NFL executives were trying to get their hands on as many pro football publications as they could to figure out who these college prospects were. And that probably led to the reason why two of the first three draft picks in that 1936 draft never even played professional football. So you had a guy, in fact, Jay Berwanger, who was the first Heisman Trophy winner. He was the first overall selection by the Philadelphia Eagles in 1936. The Eagles knew that they didn't have the money to actually sign him. They traded his right to the Chicago Bears. And when the Bears tried to negotiate a contract with him, he decided, you know what? There's not a whole lot of money in pro football. I'm going to save my eligibility, and I'm going to try out for the 1936 Olympic team. He didn't make the Olympic team in 1936, and instead of going into football after that, he decided, you know what, I'm just going to start a sales career. It was more lucrative than playing in the National Football League at the time. And so, the first ever draft pick in the NFL never played professional football. The Bears did have much better luck with the sixth overall pick of the 1936 draft. That was Joe Stadahar, and he played 10 years, over 10 years in the National Football League. And ultimately was the first player that was drafted into the National Football League to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So we do have one player from that 1936 draft that ended up making it to the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Well, I think something interesting that you said that really speaks to everything. Jay Burrowing. There's no money in football. I mean, that speaks to the difference between at that time. Red Grange tells a story of he had been more highly thought of had he joined the Capone mob in Chicago than the Chicago Bears in the mid-20s. And so, can you talk real quick about just the NFL and just its humble beginnings, if you will?
Sure. Yeah. The game has changed so much, but the business side of it has changed so much. I mean, with the popularity, I think television has really helped the game explode in terms of its popularity, in terms of the money that's involved in the game now. So that's a big thing. When you talk about it as the league progressed and you get into this, what we refer to as the modern era of pro football, kind of, the 1960s with the AFL NFL merger coming late in the 60s and really taking hold in 1970, that's where you really start to see the salaries of the players rise, making it much more desirable as a college prospect to play professional football after your college days. And so, with the AFL coming in 1960, there was a bidding war for players. I mean, not only free agent players are trying to take players from that were established in the National Football League, but college prospects. You had secret drafts being held by both the NFL and the AFL, the American Football League and the National Football League, trying to get the best college prospects to sign with their teams. And what that did was, well, you could, as a college prospect, you could start to negotiate your price a little bit better and for your services. And so you had rising salaries, and with those rising salaries really helped the desirability for prospects wanting to go into the profession of professional football.
And there's so many things that we could spend hours on this today. But for example, as you talked about, Gale Sayers, the '65 draft was drafted by the AFL and NFL by the Bears and the Chiefs. Now, you kind of touched on three different things, and I want to see which one do you think might have been the biggest, or maybe they're all of equal importance. You talked about just having access to who you're drafting and being able to research backgrounds and stuff like that. You talked about television, and obviously we're going to get into that a little bit here today as far as the draft, and it being a national broadcast event, but then also the competition, the increasing salaries. Do you think any of those or all three of those are probably some of the biggest factors to how the draft has evolved over the years?
I think they all have their place in terms of factors of how the game has grown over the years. But yeah, I think from the standpoint of television, the NFL is great at putting on events. I mean, they are a world-renowned events organization. I mean, and so as as the years have gone on, I mean, some of these things that were just annual meetings like the NFL draft have now become, nationally televised events, worldwide television events, free agency frenzy, where it's, up to, maybe even 10 years ago, it was just free agency happened. Players were free to sign and they would sign. Well, now it's, they have free agency frenzy. It's a marathon of television events that, who's signing where and for how much and all these, breaking news type, they're breaking news all over the place. So, the NFL draft is no different, and to see how it's kind of left New York City, where it was held for many years, and Radio City Music Hall, and now it's this traveling event where hundreds of thousands of people watch it live, millions more on television. It's pretty incredible to see how it's grown, and so that's really impressive.
And this is something you're very I say knowledgeable about in this area, because you just did. Then we were just talking before, and like 3 weeks ago, you just did a research project on this on the history of the NFL draft. And can you talk about that real quick? What you did on that?
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, so we, one of the great things that I get an opportunity to do is write articles for Canton Repository and Gannett, in their network. And so, yeah, I did some research on, the history of the NFL draft. I also had done an article about Curtis Martin, which is one of my favorite stories in terms of a player and the NFL draft and kind of what he was feeling and the emotion that goes along with that. And then also how he was able to use the values of the game to kind of impact other people. And we can get into that a little bit, but yeah, I've certainly, I have the opportunity to do a lot of really cool things. And one of the other things that we do is a weekly call, or a monthly call, I'm sorry, with some of our older Hall of Famers. And so we get on these calls, we talk history of the game, and I'm able to learn, firsthand from some of these great resources. Billy Shaw talked about, the Dallas Cowboys trying to recruit him out of college to sign with them. Buffalo Bills were also interested in him. The Dallas Cowboys wanted to make him. He had played two ways in college, and the Cowboys wanted him to play linebacker. His college coach thought he was more suited. His body would fill out, and he would be more suited to be a guard. And so he ultimately decided to go with the Buffalo Bills. He signed with the Buffalo Bills. The other thing his college coach told him was, if you sign with the AFL, you have a chance to be a part of history. And Billy Shaw ultimately is a major part of history in the fact that he is the only Pro Football Hall of Famer to play his entire career in the American Football League. Some of them played in the American Football League, but then merged with the NFL. Billy played his entire career with the AFL, so was really a part of history, and for him in his career, made the right decision to sign with the Bills over the Cowboys, much to Gil Brandt's chagrin.
I was going to say to Gil Brandt's. I think fans want to know this. I mean, obviously this is very subjective, but being an expert in the history of the game and the guardian of the legacy of this history the position that you have, I think fans would like to know, possibly, what do you think is the greatest draft that has ever happened? Is it the '83 with the 6 quarterbacks? Also, Bruce Matthews and Darrell Green. You brought up one just before as we were talking. The 2011 with AJ Green and Julio Jones and JJ Watt. What's your opinion or thought, or you just choose to stay out of it and just say they're all great?
Well, in a lot of ways, I try to stay out of it. I choose to each draft, I think, has the ability to impact not only the teams that are drafting these players, but the players themselves. So I really get excited watching, the draft every year, because you look at these individuals, and to me, it showcases how hard work, commitment to your craft can really help you achieve lifelong dreams. And so, I mean, you see these individuals, and I'll call them young men, because they are not fully developed. I mean, they're large individuals, but they're young men. I mean, 20, 21 years old, some of them as young as 19 that have entered the draft. And so, to see them and how tough and how hard they work on the football field. And then you see the emotion when they are drafted and they just break down and they're there with their families. That's a special time. It's a special moment. And for me, I think that's where you can start to look at those values that the game teaches, and you can see the impact that they have on people. And it's a life-changing moment. That moment when their name is called in the NFL draft, it's a life-changing moment for them. And all of a sudden, they will forever be known as an NFL player. And then they can use that platform for so many great things. And they do use their platform for so many great things moving forward.
Yep. And so that's something beautiful that we get to do, especially with the Hall of Famers, is for them and my job be able to use to get our guys out there and use their platform to do good. And as we know the guys very well, John, that they're out there doing some amazing things. I could go guy after guy after guy that's in the Hall of Fame. And that's not only just those guys, it's current guys in the NFL, guys like J.J. Watt, who when Hurricane Harvey hit, raised $40+ million, served 247 million meals as a part of his effort. So guys that are just doing amazing things. But you touched on special moments, and I think we can just conclude with this one and wrap things up. But talk about you hit on it at the beginning, and there was a very special moment for Curtis Martin and his outlook on the draft. And can you talk about that with Bill Parcells just to close things out, because it was a special moment and a platform. Both of those things are tied in.
Well, right, and Curtis Martin's he had a tremendous journey to even get to the NFL. I mean, he grew up in one of the poorest neighborhoods in America, in an area in Pittsburgh that really he struggled early on in youth. He seen a lot of his family members not just die, some of them were murdered. And so he struggled, and he really didn't start playing football until later in high school. Had a breakout senior season, had colleges starting to call him, and then ultimately decided to stay kind of close to home, went to the University of Pittsburgh, had a breakout junior season, starting to think like, maybe first round draft pick was in his future. Kind of exploded onto the scene. His senior season had a 200+ yard rushing day against the University of Texas in Pittsburgh's first game. But then he hurt his ankle pretty severely and missed the rest of the season, and kind of was an afterthought of that draft. And that was in 1995 was his draft day. And he slipped to the third round. I think he was 74th pick overall. And it was Bill Parcells, when he was coaching with the New England Patriots, that called Curtis up and said, hey, Curtis, are you ready to play football for the New England Patriots? And Curtis, obviously, to Coach Parcells, said, yes, sir, can't wait to get going. But he had his doubts, and he hung up the phone, and he was at his house with family and friends for his draft party. And he started to feel that emotion that he wasn't quite sure where, what his future held. And he turned to his mentor at the time, was his pastor. And he said, I don't know if I'm ready to play professional football. I don't know if I love the game that much. And his pastor turned to him and said, Curtis, maybe it's not so much about your love for the game, but maybe what this game can teach you and what it can help you do in terms of being the vehicle to reach people and do good. And Curtis really took that to heart and, went to training camp that year, changed his whole mindset and focus, and ended up having a breakout rookie season, played 3 years with the Patriots, then was traded for and brought to the New York Jets. He became only the second player in NFL history to rush for 1,000 yards in his first 10 seasons. The only other one was Barry Sanders. But at the end of the day, it was those values that Curtis learned through the game to impact people's lives. And he's a life coach today, and feels strongly that it's those values that he can take and instill in other people to help raise them up. And to me, that it shows you that these players that are being drafted today, they're not finished products, and people have to realize that they're getting drafted. Their lifelong dreams are coming true, but they're going to continue to grow. And like we mentioned before, I don't think people understand just how much these NFL teams, these NFL players are impacting their communities for the better. Mm-hmm. These guys, they play games on Sunday. They take a beating. Their bodies do physically. Monday they go in for treatment. They go in to break down a little bit of film. Tuesday is usually their day off. And these guys, they're not sitting at home playing video games. They're going out into the community on Tuesdays, and they're building playgrounds for kids. They're feeding homeless. They're doing so much good, and I think that's something that that for me, as long as I'm in this position that I'm in, I'm going to continue to promote those types of things because I see the press releases come in every day that I'm preserving. I hear the stories from these individuals, and I'm going to continue to share that because I think the world needs to understand how much good not only the NFL and the clubs are doing in the communities, but these individual players and coaches as well.
Well, John, I think that's a perfect way to end it because I couldn't agree more with you, obviously. But I just want to say thank you, John, for taking time today and connecting in with us. And to all the fans out there that are watching, any youth that are out there watching, parents, teachers, feel free. If you have any questions, you can email us at education@profootballhof.com. And so we appreciate everyone that watches this, and I just want to say take care and God bless.